Okay, so the Maimer we're going to learn today, starting tonight, is Lag BaOmer Maimer. Was said in the Toshin Chav Beis, 1962, by the Rabbi on Lag BaOmer itself. And it starts with a quote that has often been connected with Lag BaOmer. We'll see why later. So the Maimer begins. Shir Amal is LeDavid, Hini Matov Manoim, Sheves Achim Gam Yochad. In Tehillim, it says, one of the Shir Amalos, it says, a Shir Amalos written by David, Hine matov manoim, behold how good and how beautiful it is. What is so beautiful? Sheves achim gam yachad, the sitting of brothers, also together. Literally. So the line is a famous line, we know it from singing it, but it's from Tehillim. Hine matov manoim, how beautiful it is, how nice it is. Sheves achim gam yachad, when brothers sit, and they're together. So the Frierdiker Rebbe questions this pasuk in a Maimer, starting with this pasuk that says, when it says Sheves Achim means the sitting together, the sitting of brothers, a gathering of brothers. So what does that imply? That itself implies that they're sitting together with brotherhood and love. That's what Sheves Achim is. And so what is added by saying, and they're also together? Sheves Achim, the brothers are sitting together, and not only that, but they're also united, Yachad, they're one. Sheves Achim, when you describe a scene as being Sheves Achim, what you're describing is a brotherly scene. A scene where people are sitting together feeling brotherhood, friendship, oneness. So what does the pasuk seem to add? Gam, and also they're together. They're one. They're united. That's what achim are. That's what brotherhood is. It seems to say. I mean, the wording of the pasuk seems to be almost like it's a surprise. You know what's a really nice thing? When brothers sit together. Not only that, but they're actually united. Well, if you're calling it Sheves Achim, the sitting together of brothers, that's a brotherly thing. They're already united. So and they're together as well. Like what's being added here? So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains. This is the Rebbe quoting the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Maimer. The Achim hem neshamas the dacha v'nukva hashayachim zeh lezeh. What Achim means, brothers here, is referring to neshamas, male and female neshamas, that have an association with each other. They are connected to each other like a chassan v'kala, like a groom and a bride. That a groom and a bride are also called achim, brothers and sisters, a sibling connection, because they're neshamas that have an inner association, a bond. Just like a brother and a sister, their connection is they come from the same source, they come from the same family, the same parents, and that is their innate bond. So to a chassan and kala, a bride and groom, also come from the same source, the same soul. They're soulmates. Their souls are connected. So in this pasuk, when it says achim, brothers, so it doesn't really mean brothers in the sense we usually think of. It's talking about soul brothers, and it doesn't even really mean brothers. It means siblings. Soul siblings. Who are soul siblings? Who is your brother or your sister on the soul level? Your soulmate. So that's what Achim means. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe explains. Achim means male and female souls that are siblings on a spiritual level because they belong together. They're from the same source. They're soulmates. So the Sheves Achim, so then if that's what Achim means, soul siblings, so what is the sitting together of soul siblings? Sheves Achim. That refers to when these soul siblings sit together, meaning they form a bond, a closeness and a connection through engagement. What we call getting engaged. Kishur Tanoim, which in older times was a time when they made Tanoim, which means when after a shidduch was made, so they would sit down and make Tanoim, which means the conditions, they would make a deal, as far as when the wedding's going to be and who's going to pay for it. And that would be at one level of commitment. They're not married yet, they're going to get married, a commitment to get married. That would precede the wedding. It could be a year earlier, before. Well, today we call it engagement. It's a bit different, but it's the same idea. That you had achim, you have soul siblings, but they don't even know each other yet. Then they meet, and they recognize each other as being soul siblings. So that's called sheves achim. Now they're sitting together. They've formed a bond. They've become engaged. And this is all just a preparation for the marriage, for getting married. She'oz nasa gam yochad. And when they get married, then they're actually together. Until they got married, so then they sat together, they have a deal that they haven't lived together, they haven't united, they haven't actually become one. That is the wedding when it's gam yochad, when they actually become one. Notice our discussion is gam yichud. Not just they have a relationship, but they actually have a oneness. They connect and become united as one. So the Friedrich Rebbe explains this pasuk rather surprisingly, and we didn't pick this up in the pasuk. Hinei ma'tovim anoim. What is the most beautiful thing? Sheves achim gam yachad. In that phrase, sheves achim gam yachad is described three levels. There's achim, soul siblings, strangers. They don't know each other. Their souls are connected, a male and a female, two sides of the world sometimes. They don't know each other, but they're interconnected because they're one soul. They're brother and sister on a soul level. Sheves achim is when they finally sit together, is when they found each other, they connect, and they become engaged, or they do the tanoim. They make a commitment to each other. But then, gam yochad, then the third level is when they actually become one through getting married. They're not just committed to each other, but they form a union, a bond, which is marriage. Yeah?
I'm just confused. Why are we comparing brothers? Why do we keep using siblings with siblings, soul siblings, and then referring that to soulmates? Isn't there a definite distinction?
Yeah, but the similarity is like I said, that just like a brother and a sister, what is their connection? Because they come from the same place, the same source, the same parents. So to soulmates. Right. Come spiritually from the same place. They're one soul that has been split off. Okay. So.
But you're just asking why don't you call them soulmates in the beginning?
No, now I can understand more why they derived that. I just thought it was a bit of a stretch to go from siblings to soulmates, but yeah.
It's not just saying, well, siblings are a guy and a girl, so let's make it into bride and groom.
Yeah, but not only that, they're talking about
it's saying
brothers.
that there's a way to describe. Okay. Grammatically, in the Hebrew language, just like in many languages, the male is the default.
Yeah.
So, like banim can mean sons or can mean children.
Right.
Achim can mean brothers or can mean siblings,
right,
in the general sense. So we usually think achim as being brother. Okay, sheves achim is the sitting together of siblings. Who are the siblings? Soulmates. And several times elsewhere as well, like for example in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, it's achoisi kala, my sister the bride.
Right.
The chassan refers to the bride as achoisi kala, my sister the bride. What does it mean, sister? The sisters that were from the same source. Avram and Sarah, when they were traveling to Mitzrayim, Avram said to Sarah, don't say you're my wife, say you're my sister.
But it's not really lying.
So he wasn't really lying. He was talking about a level in their relationship where they're really brother and sister. When you go through Mitzrayim, which is a place of ugliness, of lowliness, when our relationship goes through Mitzrayim, so then we have to remember that we're brother and sister. We're soulmates. We belong together. So it's not just here. It's not that the Friedrich Rebbe just pulled it out of a hat. It's something that's found generally throughout Chassidus, an idea that achoisi, my sister, but achoisi, brother and sister, is a description of a soulmate as well.
So that makes sense with Gam Yachad now.
So now Gam Yachad makes sense because it's talking about a different level of relationship. There's Sheves Achim, Gam Yachad. There's two levels. There's being committed to each other, but not yet one, and then there's actually uniting. There's being engaged and being married. two different stages. So, the next paragraph. So the Frierdiker Rebbe continues in his Maimer. The Issa B'Zoyar, Shevas Achim Gam Yachad, Kochbichu Knesses Yisrael. The Zoyar says on this pasuk that Shevas Achim Gam Yachad, the sitting together of siblings, and also being one, being together, being one, is referring to Hashem and the Jewish soul, the Jewish collective soul called Knesses Yisrael. It's a term that's used throughout the Zohar. Knesses Yisrael literally means the congregation of Israel, but what it's referring to is the collective Jewish soul. That the Jewish people are like one big soul, and that collective soul, each one of us is like one part, one portion, one aspect of that soul, but that collective Jewish soul has a collective relationship with Hashem. And that relationship is usually referred to as a husband and wife relationship, Hashem being the husband and the Jewish soul being the wife. And that, again, Shir HaShirim, the entire book, Song of Songs, is based on that metaphor. It's a love story. If you read it literally, it's just a man and a woman chasing each other in love. It doesn't mention anything particularly religious in the whole book. But it's a metaphor to the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people as a romance between a man and a woman. So that's what Shir HaShirim is. It was once described that the whole Chassidus is a commentary on Shir HaShirim. That basically the whole Chassidus is an explanation as to what this romantic relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people is all about. And that metaphor, which Shir HaShirim is based on, Chassidus particularly grabbed on and expands upon and emphasizes this love relationship. It helps you understand male-female relationships, and it helps you, and male-female relationships help you understand Hashem as well. So in the Zohar it says that when it says here the sitting together of siblings and they're one, it's referring to, who are the siblings? It's referring to Hashem and the Jewish people, the ultimate cosmic soulmates. And Gam, when it says Gam and also Gam Yachad, that they're sitting together and they're one, the Gam is L'Rabbis Yisrael Delatata. That is to include the Jewish people as they are down here.
I'm a little bit lost. Can we do the three levels with the analogy of God again?
Yeah. Okay. So what's it? The Zohar is saying like this. The Zohar is now. This is now a new interpretation of the pasuk. First, we had the Frierdiker Rebbe's interpretation, and that was that Shevas Achim Gam Yachad is referring to male and female souls, soulmates, soul siblings, who they were connected before they were born, even though they were one. Then they find each other and they become Shevas Achim. They commit to each other to get engaged, and then they become Gam Yochad. They become one when they get married. That's the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Maimer, after giving that explanation, also quotes what the Zohar says on this pasuk. The Zohar gives a different angle, not totally unrelated, but a different angle on the pasuk. The Zohar says that no. Shevas Achim Gam Yachad, who are the siblings? The siblings are Hashem and the Jewish people. That's Shevas Achim. Gam Yachad, and also they are one, says the Zohar, refers to the Jewish people as they are down here. Not just Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish collective soul, but even the Jewish people as they are a physical human race down here in this world. In other words, Knesset Yisrael is referring to the spiritual collective soul of the Jewish people, which is like a heavenly entity. Then there's we simple folk down here, not our spiritual representative in heaven, but as we are down here in this world. There's Hashem's relationship with the theoretical Jewish soul, and then there's Hashem's relationship with us, we Jewish people down here in the world. So Gam Yochad, says the Zohar, is saying that Hashem is united not just with the Knesset Yisrael, with the Jewish soul as it is in heavens, the collective spiritual version, but even Yisrael Delasata, the Jewish people as they are down here in this world. Hashem has a oneness, a bond.
So why
we are
is it
soulmates. Because to say that Hashem is one with the collective Jewish soul, that makes sense. That's talking about a spiritual entity, but it's nothing to do with me. That's my muzzle. That's my shorish and neshama. That's as we are in the world of Atzilus, Hashem is connected to us.
Right.
So that's not also all that surprising. What about me down here? Am I also intimately bound up with Hashem? Do I have a romantic relationship with Him? Am I His soulmate as well? Yes. Gam Yachat.
The Zohar says this. The Friedrich Rebbe doesn't say this.
The Friedrich Rebbe is quoting the Zohar that says that
fine.
also down here.
Okay, fine.
Gam
But the Friedrich
Yachat.
Rebbe, like we know that already from the Alter Rebbe and everyone else.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Why did we only discuss 2 levels if the last one we did 3? So the 3 levels was Achim, Sheves Achim, Sheves Achim B'Yachad, and here we just did Sheves Achim and Sheves Achim B'Yachad. No? Did I miss something?
Well, first of all, it's 2 different sources, 2 different commentaries. But before we said, what does Achim mean? Male and female souls. Sheves Achim means getting engaged.
Yeah.
And Gam Yachad means getting married. Here we said, Achim means Hashem and the collective Jewish soul. Sheves Achim means that Hashem is one with the collective Jewish soul. He sits together in love with the collective Jewish soul. Gam Yachad means, and he is also in love with the Jews as they are down here. Not just their soul in the world of Atzilus as it is in its source, but also we down here in our physical bodies as we occupy this world.
Aren't those 2 levels of us down here and us on our spiritual source the same to Hashem? Like if he's having an intimate relationship with our soul level and he's having an intimate relationship like to Hashem, it's like no different. To his essence, like us down here or our soul counterpart, it's all one to him.
If we're talking about a relationship means not just how it is to him, it means how it impacts
is to us. Yeah.
So so a relationship means really with us. So you could say that Hashem
So
has
it's not just our spiritual level has that relationship with Hashem, but we actually physically
Down
have that
here.
relationship down
Correct.
here. Yeah.
That.
So Hashem, it doesn't make a difference, but to us it makes a difference.
Correct. So at the moment, as we've looked at it so far, we're talking about 2 different interpretations of this verse. The Friedrich Rebbe's one, which is talking about human soulmates in their relationship with each other, getting engaged, getting married. And then there's the Zohar who gives a different interpretation. It's talking about the relationship Hashem, the groom, has with the Jewish people, the bride. That's what the Achim means. Now, the Rebbe now adds his thing to this, to what the Friedrich Rebbe said, and says V'yeshlem, in the second line of the second paragraph. V'yeshlem, we could say, Shashayches da pirusha Achim hem chasen v'kala im maimer hazoyer the koyal kujabrichu knesset Yisrael. There's a connection. The reason why the Friedrich Rebbe, the same Friedrich Rebbe in the same Maimer brings these 2 interpretations is because there is a direct connection between the 2. They're not just 2 versions of 2 different ideas. They actually are interconnected. The interpretation that siblings here is referring to soulmates, human soulmates, or that siblings is referring to Hashem and the Jewish people, they're directly parallel to each other. Why? Because the concept of chasen and kala down here, of soulmates, of male and female down here in this world, that very idea is itself an expression of the divine version of soulmates, which is Hashem and the Jewish soul. And that's why the Friedrich Rebbe in his Maimer, after interpreting brothers, siblings as being soulmates, he then brings the Zohar as saying it's talking about Knesset Yisrael and Hashem. The reason he brings it is it's his source. That's actually the Friedrich Rebbe's source for his interpretation. The Friedrich Rebbe is saying, my interpretation is not a new one, it's based on what the Zohar says. How so? The Zohar says that Achim, siblings, is referring to Hashem and the Jewish people. I'm saying it's referring to men and women. So what's the connection? Because where do men and women come from? Why do you think there are men and women in the world? Because Hashem in His creation created a relationship between Him and the Jewish soul, a romantic relationship, and that became translated in the physical world as men and women chasing each other. So the Rabbi here said a very profound idea. He's saying that we know that Chassidus often uses mishalim, metaphors, parables, illustrations for ideas. And one of the things that defines Chassidus is, the Rebbe once said it, is in Yiddish, so the Chassidus verbindt the mashal mit the nimshal, meaning that Chassidus joins together the mashal with the nimshal, the metaphor to what it's talking about, and shows that they're actually one thing. A metaphor is not just, okay, we need to tell a story to illustrate the point, so let's think of something that's similar. No. It's that all worlds are parallel to each other. The spiritual and the physical world are not two disjointed entities. The physical world is an emanation expression of the spiritual world. Meaning anything you see in this physical world has a spiritual counterpart. And therefore is the mashal. That's the metaphor for its spiritual counterpart. So when Chassidus gives a mashal, it's not just that, okay, let's find something in the familiar world that can explain this. It's, let's find this spiritual entity as it is expressed in the physical world. And therefore it is a mashal, therefore it's a metaphor. They're two versions of the same reality. So if the book Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, written by Shlomo Melech, with Ruach HaKodesh, is a love song about a man and a woman, but really it's a metaphor for Hashem and the Jewish people and their relationship. How did he come up with that? It's not that, well, Hashem and the Jewish people have this relationship, so let's look around at relationships in this world and find a good metaphor. It's that one is an expression of the other. The fact that there's this male-female dichotomy in the world, and that tension creates love and relationships and all the sorrows and joys that brings. That is because that is just the physical emanation of a spiritual reality, of Hashem's interaction with the Jewish soul, which is the ultimate love story. So the metaphor is a version of its inner meaning. It's an outer version of the inner meaning. So therefore, when the Frierdiker Rebbe learned the Zohar, and the Zohar says that Sheves Achim Gam Yochad means Hashem and the Jewish people, the way he read that, by bringing it down to a level that's closer to us, is it's talking about soulmates. Because it's really the same thing. Just the Frierdiker Rebbe explained it in a more down-to-earth way. The Zohar is Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is often more abstract. Chassidus brings it down to be more tangible for us. Interestingly, by the way, the word Kabbalah, which we use to describe this sort of mystical teachings, so usually it's translated Kabbalah as meaning receiving, receive teaching. And it's called Kabbalah because you can't make it up yourself. You have to receive it from either a teacher, like a Kabbalist has to teach you, or if not, so then you have to learn it from Eliyahu Navi, or some revelation. You can't make up Kabbalah. It has to be received. It has to be revealed to you and you receive it. That's why it's called Kabbalah, l'kabel, to receive. Another explanation for the word Kabbalah, in fact, the root of the word Kabbalah, kuf beis lamed, that verb, as it's found in the Torah, is only found in a different form, in the word makbilos, in the description of the Mishkan, the various poles of the Mishkan. It says that they were makbilos, that they were parallel to each other. So the word Kabbalah could actually be translated as the study of parallels, meaning the understanding of how everything in one world is a parallel of another world. And whatever you've understood in one level, you can understand it and extrapolate the next level to understand what its parallel in a higher realm. So therefore, the Rebbe explains that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave his interpretation of Sheves Achim Gam Yochad as being soulmates, men and women. He quoted the Zohar as saying that it's Knesset Yisrael and Hashem and the Jewish people and their relationship. That's who these siblings are. Why did he quote the Zohar if that's not his interpretation? No, he's saying that's my source. That's where I get it from. How do I know that siblings is men and women? Because the Zohar says that it's Hashem and the Jewish people, which is the ultimate man and woman soulmate relationship. I just translated it to the next level, to the next parallel.
Don't we risk then, obviously, like by creating that analogy or don't we risk then either personifying God in this world and then trivializing his infinity, or trivializing just the whole concept altogether because it's humans and we lack?
Correct. That's why you can't do it yourself. That's why Kabbalah, you have to
say this is where it parallels.
Correct. And the Baal Shem Tov actually said that for somebody to study Kabbalah directly without Chassidus, there's a greater danger of that.
Yeah.
Because Kabbalah talks in very physical terms. You read the Zohar and just talks about the shape of God's beard, and doesn't like strip it of its very physical description, and people can get very lost in that. Whereas Chassidus always strips it out and says, but it's not talking about this, it's talking about that, and makes it into something more abstract. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why you can't just browse it yourself. It doesn't work, because it could be dangerous. Okay. Let's continue in the third paragraph. So it seems we could add a further insight to this. That the explanation that the Frierdiker Rebbe offered in his Maimer as to the meaning of these two levels of relationship between siblings, meaning soulmates, that the soulmates find each other and commit to each other, which is Tanoim, engagement, and then they get married, which is then Gam Yachad, they actually become one. That idea that the Frierdiker Rebbe offered, Hu Gam La Pirusha Achim Koyal B'nei Yisrael, could also apply to the Zohar's interpretation that could also apply to the simple interpretation of the verse, which is that Achim, the brothers that are referred to in this pasuk, who's it referring to? Before we started learning this, when you sat around the campfire and sang Hinema, who did you think you were talking about? Hinema Tov, Shevas Achim Gam Yochad, sitting, brothers, us, the Jewish people, our friends in our community, in our camp, and whatever, us. So that's what the Mefarshim on Tehillim, that's how they interpret it. The simple explanation of the verse, before getting into the Zohar and the Chassidus, is talking about the Jewish people sitting together. There's nothing greater than the unity amongst the Jewish people. Says the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe's interpretation of the verse, which is it's talking about two levels of relation between soulmates, engagement and marriage. You could even apply that to the simple interpretation of the verse that the Achim here is referring to our brothers and sisters, the Jewish people. And there as well, that in the unity and the brotherhood of the Jewish people amongst ourselves, there are also two levels of unity, similar to the unity of a chassan and kala that become engaged, committed to each other, and then get married. What are these two levels? There is a level of connectedness similar to engagement, getting engaged, like a chassan and kala, bride and groom becoming engaged. There's that connection we have with our fellow Jew. And then through that we come to a level of oneness, of becoming one with each other. You become connected, and then you become one. Just like a chassan and kala become connected through engagement, but they're not one yet. Then through marriage they become actually one. So too in the unity amongst the Jewish people, there's hiskashrus, there's our connection with each other, and then there's a level that we get to through connection, and that is oneness with each other. What is that?
Weather.
Yeah. So, in other words, what does hiskashrus mean? Hiskashrus means there's a bond there, there's a connection there. But by definition, when you use the word connection, what does that imply? How many parties are we talking about? At least two. You can't be connected with only one party. Like there's at least two people connected to each other. So the very term connection, that we are connected, we're all connected. To say that we're all connected, we're connected to every Jew, every Jewish soul is connected wherever we are in the world. But what does that imply itself? We're connected, we're separate entities that are connected. There's something that we share, that there's these strings of connection that bind us together. But we're separate entities. That's one level. A deeper level is achdus, or his achdus, which means oneness. We're not separate beings. We're one soul. We're all one soul. We're all one thing. So first through feeling his kashrus, then you can feel his achdus. First through feeling a connection with each other, we can then come to oneness with each other. I mean, this is similar to what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya about the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. Is to love your fellow as yourself means to actually overcome our physical separation and see ourselves as a soul. When you see yourself and another as a soul, so then on a soul level we are one. On a physical level, you're you, I'm me, we're connected. We have something in common. On a spiritual level, it's not you're you and I'm me, we're all a piece of the divine, the same God. So what's the difference between you and me? We're all one. It's different. There's a difference between connected. Connected, we can be separate entities. You got your business, I got my business. Just we affect each other and we care for each other and we have a bond. Oneness is, your business is my business. We're one being. So too, Chassan and Kala, being engaged is, we're engaged, and now you go home and I go home, and we're still separate entities. Whereas Nisuin, marriage, is the union of the soul becomes one. So the same, that division that the Frierdiker Rebbe made in his interpretation could be applied to the simple interpretation. Shevas Achim, Gam Yochad. That there's Shevas Achim, that we're brothers and sisters, we're connected, but then there's Gam Yochad, that we're actually one. So, Valpiza Yeshlaim, the fourth line of that bottom paragraph. Valpiza Yeshlaim. So with this we can say further. The Zesha may be by Maimer Pirush Zoyer. The Shevas Achim Gam Yochad Koi Ala Yichud de Kuchbrichel Knesset Yisrael. The fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Maimer brings the Zoyer, quotes the Zoyer's interpretation of the verse, that Shevas Achim Gam Yochad is referring to the oneness between Hashem and the Jewish people. Which again we said, why does he have to bring this verse? Why is he quoting it? Is what the Frierdiker Rebbe is hinting at is that if you want to reach a level of oneness with your fellow Jew, where you're not just connected, but you're actually one, you're actually united, the only way to do that, the only way to have that level of love and oneness amongst us, which is the level of yichud, of nisuin, of marriage, is through revealing the oneness that the Jewish soul has with Hashem.
Why? I want to ask how.
What?
So here, the Rebbe also quotes at the bottom, in note 9, to see Tanya Perek Lamed Beis, which is what we just mentioned. Mm-hmm, yeah. That how is it possible for you to feel one with a fellow Jew? It's only through you feeling one with Hashem. You know, the classic question is that, can't you be a good person without God? You can be a good person without God. Surely you can. If you're kind to your fellow being, don't hurt people, you don't need God for that. You can be a good person without God, and that's definitely, no doubt, true and possible. What's also possible is that with God you can be not a good person. There can be people who believe in God and don't act good. Of course that's possible. But what Tanya points out is that for you to truly love your fellow as yourself, you can't do that without God. Because there will be some people who you might love, some people who you love more than others, but like yourself, no one. Because your love for yourself, that's an instinctive action, a reaction to it, like it's innate. It's you. You don't love yourself because of anything, you didn't earn it. It just is. Love for another person has to be developed, and there has to be something lovable about them. It can only be like yourself without God. But the more attuned you become to the spiritual reality, to the fact that a person is not just a body but is a soul, and that soul is divine, and there's only one God, and all of our souls come from that same place. The more aware you are of that, the more the borders between one person and another fall away, and you can truly love the other as yourself. Because why wouldn't I? It becomes irrational not to. Why wouldn't I love you like myself? What's the difference between us? Your soul and my soul are both from the same God. We're one. We are one. So why wouldn't I love you like myself?
So why did you say another Jew, not anyone? Because everyone's from God.
Yeah. I don't know inside of them.
Why not?
True,
We're all
but
in the image of God from Adam.
correct. But there's a difference. There is a difference between. I mean, v'yaftal recha kamecha. The mitzvah is to your fellow Jew, your fellow. It's like saying that, why are you so connected with your family? We're all one family. I mean, we're all related. We all come from Adam and Eve. So like it's your brother's wedding. What about your next door neighbor's wedding, or a complete stranger's wedding? What's the difference? Okay, there's a difference of connection. Of course there is. There has to be. Even the Torah recognizes love your fellow as yourself. There is first yourself, then there's your fellow. Like, of course there's layers of connection, and so that we should have a love for all humanity, all creation for that matter. That's for sure true. But the level of connection you have with your own family compared to that for a distant relative and then to a stranger is different. And your love for yourself is also different. And more specifically, the Jewish people are one soul. The Knesset scroll we mentioned earlier is that the Jewish people are actually all one soul, split off into different subsets. That's a uniquely Jewish thing. Being a part of the Jewish people means being a part of that one soul, that one Jewish collective soul. And so to see your fellow as a part of yourself, that is a uniquely Jewish thing. To see somebody as a divine creation and therefore worthy of respect and love and value, that's for sure, that's for everyone. But to love someone as yourself, that has to be a reality. We are one soul. We're actually one soul. A step further than that is that all humanity is in the divine image, and a step further from that is all creation has a spark of godliness in it.
But then there should be a step in between. How do you feel one with everyone? Feel one with God? How do you feel one with every Jew? Feel one with the one soul that we're all from?
That's feeling love with every Jew. That's the same thing. So when you recognize the intimate bond between Hashem and the Jewish collective soul, the more in tune you are with that, so then automatically the more unity you feel with your fellow Jew. Unity, not just connection, but unity. And so the point the Rabbi here is making is that the Frierdiker Rebbe is hinting that in his Maimer. When you read the verse Sheves Achim Gam Yochad, that saying how wonderful it is when brothers and sisters can sit together united, when we can all be one. Simple explanation, it's referring to the Jewish people. How do you get to that level of Sheves Achim but Gam Yochad, meaning not just we're all connected, but we're actually one? You have to learn what the Zohar says about the pasuk. The Zohar says that it's talking about the yichud, the unity of Hashem and the Jewish people. That the Jewish soul is intimately bound up with Hashem, is a piece of the divine. The more you realize that, the more the disunity dissolves, and you feel a sense of oneness. And suddenly, what seems like an impossibility, loving your fellow as yourself, is like, how could it be any other way? Of course, it is like myself. We are one.
Why is it so hard for us then to love our fellow as ourselves?
Because we're taken by our body and our physical reality, which is not one, which is quite separate. My physical needs are not your physical needs. I don't think, gee, she's hungry. I think I'm hungry. I don't know about your hunger. That's your business. I'm hungry. Your physical needs are not yours. They're not mine. Physically, we're very separate. We have competing needs and desires. You take up your space, I take up my space, and you're a threat to me. Because if I want the drink and you want it, then only one of us can have it. Physically, we're very separate. And we're fooled by that. And the more physical a person is, the less possible it is to love. You can only love, from a physical perspective, you can only love something that will feed your physical needs. If there's a person or a being or an entity that increases my self-satisfaction, physical satisfaction, I can love you. Because you're an accessory to my desires. So that I can love. If you don't fulfill my needs, or even worse, if you threaten my pleasure and my fulfillment, so then I hate you. I have to. From a physical perspective, I have to. Whereas a soulful person, somebody who becomes more in tune with soul, with the divine reality, with inner reality, the more you're into that, the more naturally united you feel with others. Natural love you feel for another. Because the separateness melts away. And if I'm in touch with my soul, I can love you for you, not for me, not for what you give me, because we're all one. Just like I care for myself, I care for you.
Do you think if we don't fully love ourselves that we struggle then to love others through that analogy?
Yeah. But loving yourself has become a very misunderstood concept, I think.
Yeah, like that just sounded so psychological. Like
No, it's become...
I've gone to wear my Garari shears for a while.
I know. Psychology will say we can't love anyone if we don't fully love ourselves. So that leaves little room.
We spend a lot of time loving ourselves.
Yeah.
That gets mixed in with the whole self-esteem thing, and it's a different thing. Love of self and self-esteem, I think, are quite different.
How do you bring this, obviously the physical needs and that soulful needs, into the practical world? Like obviously you can't be just...
Well,
Right.
in Chassidus it says the whole reason we're given an animal soul and a body is so we can appreciate somebody else's needs. You know what it's like to be hungry.
Yeah.
So you care about another person, feed them. Meaning, if I really love and care about another person, so I'm going to make sure that they have their physical needs met.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to express it, and that's why I've experienced physical needs, so I can appreciate what somebody else's needs are.
Yeah.
In other words, your gashmis is my ruchnius. Get it? Your body's needs. That's my soul's mission.
Yeah.
To look after your body's needs. Is that what you're asking?
Kind of. There's also a thing that if I gave someone my leg, then I can't walk. So I'm just saying, what's the balance between acknowledging your physical needs and acknowledging you as a physical being and acknowledging yourself as an neshama and other people? So obviously you're going to...
So
to find
for your neshama to fulfill its mission, it needs a healthy body. We can't do anything in this world if we're not healthy. And so that means you need to rest, and you need to eat, and you need to exercise, and you need to be healthy and look after yourself in order to fulfill your mission. So if giving, caring, loving, if this exhausts you or hurts you or slows you down or makes you less giving, that's selfish. Because you've got so much more to give, and here you are giving it all away. Like you can't do that. So of course, your own well-being and health and emotional well-being, that's a spiritual question. So yeah, if I give away my leg, like
Yeah. I
that
guess
might
it's
not be
just
the
like
right thing.
always finding that balance between selfishness and selflessness. Like you've got to have that balance.
Correct.
'Cause,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, like in theory, yes, but on a practical day-to-day level, sometimes it's more complicated. Like actually, should I help this person or should I help that person? You know, where should I put my time? And
right, and much of our moral dilemmas are between two good things, not between good and bad.
Yeah.
This is good, that's good, but I can't be everywhere.
yeah.
Just quickly on Jules's question, loving, like, I think that when we say love someone, like love another Jew, like love yourself, I think it's talking about an innate love that every person has, like, no matter what. Like, it's not talking about, like, a love for yourself, like a self-love based on, like, how much you love yourself, personality or whatever. It's just, like, an innate love that we love ourselves, you know? Like, when we created like that,
Yeah.
that's how
And
Phyllis talks about it. Like,
people who hurt themselves.
really just
hate
loving
themselves.
themselves. Yeah.
So even such people. So why are you so preoccupied with yourself?
Yeah. It's really just self-love.
It's a distorted form of self-love. That's not. It's a different thing. And we're not talking about extreme cases and mental illness. You know, we're talking about the struggles that everyone has and the psychological battles that everyone has. It's still all within the realm of self-love. All right. So let's conclude the paragraph. So the Rabbi here said, I mean, each line here is another explosion of thought that to really come to Shevas Achim Gam Yachad in the simple idea of sitting together and truly loving each other, being connected and deeper than that, being united and one, that can only be through appreciating the oneness we have with Hashem. Only somebody who has a sense of God in their life and soul in their life can actually truly unite with another person. Otherwise, there's nothing that unites us. There's nothing we have in common if there's not one God that created us and gave us a soul. There's nothing we have in common. The only thing that can unite us is that. Valpiza, the end of the third last line. Valpiza yesh levar gam mashe b'kasav mamshich. So with this we can also understand the continuation of this verse. The Shevas Achim Gam Yochad, because after it says Shevas Achim Gam Yochad, the sitting together of siblings and being one, it continues, Keshemen hatov al rosh, yerd al zoken zekan haaronch, yerd al pi midosav. The pasuk continues, like the good oil on the head, going down to the beard of Aaron, it goes down over his entire measurement, like over his entire body. Al pi midosav. Right, so we talked about the oneness of brothers sitting together, how good it is and wonderful it is, like the good oil that runs off the head down to the beard of Aaron, that goes all over, like over his measurements. What does that mean? Over the back. Yifel b'Yisrael ava achva mitis ad ba'ofen yachad. That if you want the oneness of Hashem and the Jewish people to impact you, the Jewish people, in a way that there'll be love and brotherhood and oneness in a true sense amongst us, to the point where we actually become totally united and one, that can only happen through drawing down the good oil. Which will be explained later in the Maimer, much later in the Maimer in Sivches.
Give us a short.
No?
Oh.
So, in summary, what the beginning of the Maimer gave us was there are three interpretations to this pasuk. The simple interpretation is how nice it is when we all sit together as brothers, and we're even united as one. That's the simple interpretation. The Frierdiker Rebbe says this is talking about soulmates. Achim are souls that belong together, male and female souls that are really one, they're from the same source. Shavas Achim means that they commit to each other through getting engaged. Gam Yochad means they actually get married. Frierdiker Rebbe also quoted the Zohar, a third interpretation of the verse, that says that it's talking about the Jewish people and Hashem. They're the brothers here, they're the siblings. The Jewish people and Hashem, that Shavas Achim, they have a bond, Gam Yachad, that unites them, that they're actually one. And Gam Yachad means not just the Jewish soul as it is up in the heavens, but even as we are down here, the Jewish people down here are one with Hashem. The Rebbe explained that what's the Frierdiker Rebbe doing, quoting his interpretation and the Zohar's interpretation, to tell you that they're actually one. Where do I get my interpretation from, says the Frierdiker Rebbe? Because the Zohar says that this is talking about Hashem and the Jewish people. So that is the ultimate pair, the ultimate couple is Hashem and the Jewish people. If that's what it's talking about, so it must be talking about every couple, which is every soulmate, which is a emanation, a physical emanation of the ultimate soulmates of Hashem and the Jewish people. Every male and female. And it's telling me that the way to reach the brotherly love, as explained in this verse, is through appreciating the love of Hashem and the Jewish people, the oneness that the Jewish soul has with Hashem. Because the more you look at a fellow being as being an extension of the divine, the more united you are with that person, the more oneness is created. In fact, that's the only way to get to that oneness. But on a deeper level, the verse says that if you really want to have true oneness, then you have to draw down the good oil, which that will be explained later in the Maimon. It's a shame.
I love it how we finish with beard of oil.
How tall was Aaron? He was tiny, yeah?
I thought he was huge.
No, Moshe was huge.